on Money Talk 1010 AM. It's the Morgan Streetman Show. Morgan and Roxanne Wilder are discussing everything from world, national, and local issues to information from the unknown. And since Morgan's an attorney, there'll probably be a little something from the law. Now, here are Morgan Streetman and Roxanne Wilder.
Hey, Tampa Bay! I got Roxanne running errands right now.
I can tell this is going to be a very fast show today.
Isn't it going to be fun today? I mean, this almost reminds me, do you remember that show where at the beginning of the show we were trying to move the chairs around, and if you hear any banging and clanging around, that's us moving.
Yeah.
But we were trying to move the chairs around, and I fell.
Right, I remember that.
Wasn't that fun?
I still have the video.
Oh, man. You have the video on that?
Yeah, you keep being a nice guy to me, or I'm going to post that.
That's what I'm saying. You holding that back?
On Facebook Live, so that would have been a good Facebook Live to watch. Yeah, anybody else need any errands run?
Yes, don't let my wife hear this. I want a cheeseburger.
I was going to say, he's going to want a McDonald's run, I believe.
That sounds great.
No, I've been really watching. I'm trying to lose some weight because I have some clothes I can't fit in, so I haven't been eating any bread or anything, and so I'm a little feisty.
You and me both, man. I started a diet, too. Got to drop some LBS. Well, speaking of dropping some LBS, today we got a lot to drop on you. We got some great stuff to tell you all about today, and we have a very special guest today, Mike Beltran.
Who we've had on the show before.
We have had him before, and he's running for office here locally, so we're going to have him for a pretty meaty segment, and of course he's got a lot of knowledge to share with us. But if you want to get on the line with us today, give us a call. It's 888-404-1010. And, hey, how are you, Roxanne?
Doing well.
Haven't seen you in a couple weeks.
I think it's been 1 week.
1 week, I know, but it seems like forever, doesn't it, Pat?
She doesn't slow down. She's so busy, especially on Monday. Monday and Fridays.
Yeah.
That's when I spend my time with Pat.
Yes.
Mondays and Fridays.
Well, anything going on we should know about in your life? Either of y'all?
No.
Trying to think what I did this weekend. I worked all weekend. How about that?
Fun.
Kept it going. What about you?
Yeah, about
I know you're
the
all
same.
busy. Yep. That's how you get ahead in this world, right? We're going to hear from our special guest, though. Mike's going to tell us what we can see into the future, our economy here in Florida. So that's always something to look at. But that's what you have to do in today's day and age. Pat, you work on the weekends?
Well, no. This weekend I relaxed a little, but I did go to the USF plant show.
Oh, I love that show.
Yes, in the Botanical Gardens.
Uh-huh.
I bought a bamboo tree.
Oh, wow. Now, this, anytime you deal with bamboo, you need to consult moi.
That's why I brought it up. But I bought a tree. Now, you might know this one. It's the bamboo that it stays in a clump.
Clumping.
Stays in a clump, and it goes up 6 feet, and then it starts bushing out.
You talking about dwarf Buddha belly?
I think that's what they called it. Yes.
Yeah, dwarf Buddha belly. Yeah, that's a good one.
And
that's
it goes
a great
up about
one to use.
45 feet in the air, but I needed to block it because there's a lot of times that there are people, and I don't know how this happens, that come over my house and they get in the hot tub and they want to take and relax.
And that's just going to add to the ambiance.
So this tree is going to help us have our relaxation privacy.
And some of those folks have less than a dwarf Buddha belly. So you need the dwarf Buddha belly for some screening.
I'm on a diet. I'm trying.
Well, one of the things I did over the weekend, we figured we'd take a quick look back at this, because one of the things I did, I was going through Huber's collection of mythological creatures and things from different civilizations, and there's about 1,500 little drawings and stone carvings and other things that they've sort of recreated in this book. It's a fascinating little book that I got a hold of. And lo and behold, I found under the pre-Columbian America plate a stone carving of a dog man. And I thought, wow, isn't that funny? And it's clearly not a werewolf because it's got humanoid features other than the dog head.
Did you do this as out there?
That was our out there last
Okay.
week, right? Was the cynocephali, which was the dog-headed mint.
Right. I missed that one.
And what I thought was interesting about this, you did miss that one. These are not werewolves. They're not shapeshifters. They always have the dog head.
Okay.
The rest of their body's humanoid. What I thought was interesting in particular about this one is this came from pre-Columbian America, and it's actually an Olmec carving, which the Olmec peoples that inhabited Central America, basically, there's some question as to where they came from, and they're connected in some way to the Egyptians and the Phoenicians, and there's some question as to whether they have relation or are descendants or relatives of those peoples who actually traveled to the New World in antiquity. And that's basically the running theory, is that they must have been connected to the Egyptians in some way. So I just thought it was interesting that they, too, have statues and representations of dog-headed men, something I'd never heard of before preparing last week. You know, another thing that we did last week was we tried to play a couple of clips for you. Now, one of them we're not going to go back to, and that was the Susan Collins one. We're not going to revisit that one, but there was a one that is very timeless, I thought, and that is the Nancy Pelosi clip from June of 2017. Now, this one didn't work last week when we tried to play it, so we're hoping that we can play it for you this week and it will work, because while I read it to you, I think it's much better to hear it from Nancy Pelosi's mouth.
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. You demonize, and then we call it the wrap-up smear. If you want to talk politics, you call it the wrap-up smear. You smear somebody with falsehoods and all the rest, and then you merchandise it. And then you write it, and they'll say, see, it's reported in the press that this, and this. So they have that validation that the press reported the smear, and then it's called the wrap-up smear. Now I'm going to merchandise the press's report on the smear that we made. And it's a tactic.
Ooh, politics is so much fun. It's so clean.
Yeah, well, you know, she discusses it in a well. And Mike, you've been the victim of a wrap-up smear yourself, and we'll talk a little bit about that, maybe. But
thanks.
Well, we probably want to stay positive. But yeah, this is politics, and you know what's funny is she deals with it in a very clinical tone. So, look, this is just politics. It's just a wrap-up smear. That's just what you do. You just make up falsehoods and you feed them to the press. And then when the press reports them, then you say, look, even the press knows about this.
Because we always talk about, on this show in particular, there's never the follow-up. There's never the accountability of, that wasn't incorrect. That was incorrect information.
Exactly. And what you heard right there was Nancy Pelosi describing exactly what they did to Justice Brett Kavanaugh during the confirmation hearings. And remember, she said, you smear somebody with what? Not with truths, but with falsehoods. So a key part of this smear is that you don't really even care about the fact that you're just making this stuff up. Hey, that's just politics. You want to talk politics? That's just politics. Well, we're going to skip our local interest because that's going to be most of the rest of our show. But I did want to tell you a little short story. And this is one I don't know if you saw. And as I'm fidgeting around, it looks like I may not have brought this story with me today. But I know enough about it to tell you a little bit about it. Did you see? Well, here it is. Did you see that video coming out of London, out of Heathrow Airport, where there was a Somali man who was detained on an airplane? He was in the process of being deported back to Somalia from Britain, where he had been a refugee. And boy, did all these virtue-signaling, liberal British folks get up and start to say, no, you can't do that to him. And they all got out their cell phones to document this tragedy that's occurring as this poor man is being shipped back to Somalia. And one guy says they're separating him from his family. They're trying to take him away from his family. And I'm telling you, a single tear rolled down my cheek because
it's a 29-year-old man who's committed a crime. Crime.
What exactly? You find out that the backstory, and this is what is really what I think is important. Things aren't always as they appear. And when you're all tied up in all your self-righteousness, it might be a good time to make sure that you understand what's actually going on first. Because these folks actually didn't. I mean, they were staging essentially a mutiny on the plane. They refused to sit down, refused to button their seatbelts. They were all kind of yelling, et cetera, et cetera. Well, guess what? This guy that you were so busy defending, Yaqub Ahmed, all right? Yaqub Ahmed. Okay, he was previously imprisoned in England for rape. He is one of a gang of rapists, who brutally assaulted this young girl. And I'll tell you how they did it. And it's really sad. Okay. Ahmed and 3 other youths basically told this young 16-year-old British girl that her friends were waiting for her. She had become separated from her friends. They were on a night out, and they said, look, your friends are waiting for you back at this flat. So we're out and about in Leicester Square in London. This is in August 2007. They lure her back to this flat, and then, hate to say it, but gang rape her. All of them did. Now, there was DNA evidence, as you might imagine, although they all denied it. But the neighbors called the police. They were all arrested, and they were all convicted. And, interestingly, this guy was sentenced to something like a very harsh sentence of 7 years for rape, which I thought, wow. Don't throw me in the briar patch. I mean, my goodness, 7 years for rape? But he was released after 4 years, okay? And then because his crime in Britain was so serious, they were going to deport him, which seems appropriate to me. But the folks on the plane knew better than the authorities, and they decided that he couldn't be deported because that would be a tragedy. We'll be right back. And welcome back to the Morgan Streetman Show. We've got some really great clips to share with you today. We've also got a special guest who's going to be joining us in just a minute, and that's Mike Beltran, who's running for State House here. But before we get Mike on the mic here, that was kind of cute. Before we get Mike on the mic, and I am having a little bit of trouble today with my diction and pronunciation. My mouth feels a little bit gluey. It's sort of sticking together.
That usually happens on a Monday.
I'll tell you what, I must have had too much fun this weekend. And that was reading Huber's book of mythological creatures. So just, draw your own conclusions there. But we have heard from the one and the only Hillary Clinton again. Boy, it's been too long, hasn't it? And here she is telling us about how you can't be civil with Republicans.
Do you see any way, even a conservative thing who I was speaking of yesterday said the only way to repair America is to try to get back to some civility and to try to make it that even if we have political disagreements, we're not going to war with each other. We're not trying to destroy each other.
Well, certainly, I would love to see us return to civility, listening to one another, working out our differences. That is not the Republican Party that exists today, and that is certainly not the administration that we have in power right now. When the Republican Senate denied the right of President Obama to have his nominee for the Supreme Court, Merrick Garland, heard.
I think you even wrote that they stole a justice from the Democratic Party.
I think they did. I mean, to keep a Supreme Court seat open for a year, to deny a distinguished jurist, they could have voted him down. They could have said, well, for ideological reasons, philosophical reasons, we're not going to vote for him. But no, they stonewalled. And that was such a breach of Senate ethics and the constitutional responsibility of the Senate to advise and consent on nominations, that you cannot be civil with a political party that wants to destroy what you stand for, what you care about. That's why I believe if we are fortunate enough to win back the House and or the Senate, that's when civility can start again. But until then, the only thing that the Republicans seem to recognize and respect is strength.
Woo-hoo! Boy, oh boy. I tell you, I'd like to show her a little strength. I mean, see if she recognizes it and respects it.
I see a lot of projection in those comments.
Well, she ought to project herself right off of the national stage because I don't think anybody wants to hear from her, the twice-failed presidential candidate that she is, the destroyer of the modern Democrat Party. Anyway, I just wanted you to hear it from her herself. We've heard it from Maxine Waters. We've heard it from others. We see people who are on the right or people who follow President Trump or work with President Trump or try to help President Trump. We see those folks getting attacked in public. They're getting attacked at restaurants. They're getting attacked on the streets. They're being violently attacked by Antifa. We saw Antifa in Portland over the weekend doing all kinds of crazy stuff. And then we've got one side, only one side of the political spectrum who is just crowing about how we must be incivil. We must treat the other side uncivilly until they come around to agree with us, because you can't be civil when you've got a party who wants to destroy everything that you believe in, i.e., and in other words, You got a party who doesn't agree with you. Well,
and
that's
don't
how
people always do that, come around to civility after people have treated them horribly? That's sarcasm.
Yeah. I mean, it's
that's not a good tactic.
That's
not going to accomplish anything for you.
That's right. Normally, the best way to make friends is to start just, being uncivil with them. They'll frequently then, if they don't agree with you now, just wait. Just wait till they've tried a little bit of your incivility. If you like civility, you'll love incivility. No. These are all jokes. This is what we're dealing with, though, today. This is what we're dealing with in our country, and I think it's really sad. Now, I want to play another clip for you, which involves Senator Merkley from Oregon, that liberal bastion where the Sarge is from. Gosh, you wonder how the Sarge came out of a place like that. But Senator Merkley has some interesting things that he wants to say. In fact, he thinks that we need to, I'll let him tell you.
I was originally going to kick off this discussion by asking if the Democrats win in November big and take control of House or maybe even Senate too, should they impeach Donald Trump? That was going to be my first question. But I think another impeachment question is worth asking given recent events. Should Democrats in Congress impeach liar, liar, pants on fire Brett Kavanaugh, the newest Supreme Court justice? Jeff Merkley, it's less likely that Democrats are going to win the Senate. But even if you do, you're not going to have the two-thirds supermajority that you need to impeach a Supreme Court justice. So what do Democrats do in the face of the most right-wing, reactionary, and tainted Supreme Court in modern American history? Just roll over? What's the solution? Roe mentions reforming. Are you on that train?
Well, let's start with the proposition that the Justice Department could, obviously under a different leader than President Trump, proceed to pursue felony charges against Brett Kavanaugh for perjury before the U.S. Senate.
And would you be pushing for that from the Senate?
I think absolutely. Absolutely. And we really have to wrestle with the court because here is the situation. The court is no longer a panel of wise individuals weighing the provisions of the Constitution against each other. It is now the most powerful legislative body, and it is a legislative body controlled by and for the powerful rather than by and for the people. And if we don't take on the issues of gerrymandering, if we don't take on the issues of voter suppression, dark money in campaigns, then we're going to lose forever more to the 1%. And the court's right at the heart of all of those key issues.
Wow. Did you hear that? Mm-hmm. He thinks they ought to pursue felony charges against Brett Kavanaugh for perjury before the Senate. For what? What did he perjure himself on? I mean, is this guy nuts? By the way, the other person you heard talking there is the one who leads that podcast. That's Mehdi Hassan. He was the one spouting off all of that liberal gibberish at the beginning. But I wanted you to hear that because I wanted you to hear, who they're pitching to on that podcast. And then you heard Senator Merkley also talk about the Supreme Court as being the most powerful legislative body. Hello. Total misunderstanding of what the Supreme Court is, what it is doing, what the word legislative means even. Now, you can certainly argue about activist judges and folks who are legislating from the bench, and I get that. That's not the argument that the senator was making, though. He's just saying it's just out and out a legislative body and it's controlled by the powerful.
I've heard people also say, Brett Kavanaugh doesn't have the demeanor to be on the Supreme Court. What does that have to do with anything? You obviously don't know what the Supreme Court justices do.
Well, I think it would be a little strange if you falsely accused a man of sexual assault, gang rape, and all kinds of horrible other things going back 30 or 40 years and expected him to be perfectly calm about it. Stuff that hasn't even been brought up in past background checks. I mean, it's not like he hasn't been before the Senate before, and the investigation hasn't been done previously. So, I mean, I thought he was very authentically upset by the situation, and I thought kind of probably about the same way that any of us would feel if we were stuck in that type of a situation. But, in Deconstructed, they started talking about a little bit, I think, about a blue wave. And what is a blue wave and what does a blue wave involve? Well, we're going to hear from Stacy Abrams, who, I don't know if you know this, she's one of the darlings of the Democratic Party right now. She's running for governor of Georgia this year against Brian Kemp. But Stacy Abrams has some things to explain to us about who makes up the blue wave.
But the thing of it is, the blue wave is African American. Yeah! It's white, it's Latino, it's Asian Pacific Islander. Yes! It is disabled. Yes! It is differently abled. Yes! It is LGBTQ. Yes! It is law enforcement. Yes! It is veterans. Yes! It is made up of those who've been told that they are not worthy of being here. Yes! It is comprised of those who are documented and undocumented. Yes!
Did you catch that last part? It's made up of documented and what? Undocumented. Oh, now we know who's in the blue wave. Now we know what makes up the blue wave. You want to hear some more about the blue wave? You got to go check this out. There were 4 Texas women who were just arrested in Fort Worth for voter fraud committed in 2016. The ladies, their names really don't matter. You can find those in the articles. But basically, they were paid. Now, I want to know who paid them, and that's yet to come out. That part's not dealt with in the story. But they were paid to target older voters on the north side of Fort Worth, Texas, in a scheme to generate a large number of mail-in ballots and harvest those ballots for specific candidates in 2016. Now, when you got to read to the end of the article, because nowhere in here does it tell you what political party they were working for. But frankly, folks, that's probably just assumed anymore, because you show me one recent documented case of Republican voter fraud. I haven't seen one, and I track the news pretty closely. But if you read all the way to the end where they have the biographies of these women, it does note that they were all working on behalf of candidates for the Democrat Party. So just wanted you to know that your blue wave consists of voter fraud and undocumented immigrants. How about that? We got more when we come back. And welcome back to the Morgan Streetman Show. Well, we do want to bring on our special guest, Mike Beltran. He's running for District 57 State House here in the state of Florida, which is over there in the Riverview, Wimauma, basically the Southeast Hillsborough area. So welcome to the show, Mike.
Thanks for having me again, Morgan. It's great to be back.
Yeah.
Good to see you again.
Sorry we had you sitting here through 2 segments of me talking. I know you were itching to get in on some of that stuff. But we wanted to kind of get to some stuff that's going to be, really more relevant to what you're running for. And that's stuff that's actually going on in your district. Now, before we jump right into that, one of the things that I mentioned this to you before the show, that we wanted to just touch on this situation with the Fed. And that is that the Fed's again raising rates. They just raised them another quarter, which is 0.25%, which is 25 basis points or 0.25%, which doesn't sound like a ton. That's normally how much they tend to move it by, except during the Obama years when they just dropped it by a whole percent to give him a nice boost and didn't raise it again for 7 years. So they left it at zero, effectively zero, for 7 years during almost the entire Obama administration. Do you understand? That was like free money. What an economic boom that should have created. And sure enough, President Trump gets into office. Even before he gets in, they immediately start raising it. So they took it up to, right before Obama left, they took it up 0.25 point. Then President Trump gets elected, another 0.25 point. And then in his term, they've raised it from 1% all the way to they just raised it to 2.25%. So now let's talk about, in the context of this, the economic activity. The reason that they're doing that is they say that the economy is essentially too hot. So, Mike, tell us about some of the economic activity that you've seen in your district during the Trump administration.
Well, our district is doing very well. There are a huge number of housing starts in my district. My district is a great place to live, by the way. So, we should have housing starts in any kind of economy, and we have. But particularly during this economy, there are a lot of businesses that are moving or expanding in my district. Mosaic is expanding its presence right in Fishhawk. And there's a lot of economic development, and we need to balance some of that growth, particularly the residential growth, and make sure we build the infrastructure, which I suppose I'll come to later. But we're having a great time in our district. It's a great place to live, and we have a very vibrant economy. And in terms of the Fed raising the interest rate, that's what they do when they think they think things are going so well, they don't want things to get overheated, and so they raise the interest rate, and then usually the stock market reacts a little bit. But that's nothing to be concerned of. The Fed wouldn't have raised the interest rate if they thought there were any problems with the economy. In fact, they would lower the interest rate when they think there are problems. So nobody should be alarmed at that or take that as anything against any of the economic policies, either here in Florida or at the national level.
Mm-hmm. I'm online, electmikebeltran.com, so you can see some of your common sense solutions, including your ideas about improving roads and reducing traffic congestion. As we see our economy grow, we have to deal with those issues that come along with it. So what are some of your ideas?
So out in Southeast Hillsborough County, we were originally an agricultural area. Since then, we've had tens of thousands of folks come and move into new developments in Valrico, Fishhawk, and also in Riverview, and also down in Sun City Center in Waimama has been built up as well. And yet a lot of our roads are still one lane in each direction. Those are the same roads that we historically had when we were a farming district. And so those roads now need to be expanded. We need to add turn lanes to get into the development so there's not congestion at these intersections. Some of them need to be repaved, and we really need better infrastructure. The infrastructure is not kept up with the growth, and the government expects us to go to work and pay taxes, and they need to give us the roads so that we can get there.
Mm-hmm. Round numbers, how many people are living in that district right now? Do you know offhand?
It's about 100. It's supposed to be 160,000.
Wow.
According to and they reapportion it every 10 years. Now we've had a lot of growth, so I wouldn't be surprised if we've grown by say 10,000 folks, and then in the next census, the district might shrink a little bit because we've had a lot of growth, particularly in my district.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, as you mentioned transportation, and I've heard you speak a number of times, and you said something the other day that kind of caught my attention, and that is, but I forget exactly what it was, but it was that you have the 3 or 4 of the worst intersections in the entire county. Can you remember what that was about?
We do have some 301 and Boyette is a very congested intersection. We also have some of the intersections by Bell Shoals, which is a single lane road, and then we have a lot of we have some schools there, and they're having drop off just during the rush hour, so that's a big problem. And then over on Lithia Pinecrest and Fishhawk Boulevard, again you have a T intersection over there. It becomes very congested in the morning. And then down on the way to Sun City Center going south, you have 301 taper to a single lane. So those are some. Big Bend, the on-ramp at 75 in Big Bend, and also on Gibsonton Boulevard. Those are some of the choke points. There's certainly others.
The one on Big Bend is just a mess every morning. It's just a horrible mess.
Yeah, I've been down there. If I have court in Manatee County, and I'm coming down that way, I've seen it. It's not on my normal commute, but it's horrible, and it's not what we're paying for. We pay taxes, but I think we're out there in the corner of the county. I think maybe some folks forget about us.
Sure.
Sometimes I'd like to provide that strong advocacy, make sure we get that infrastructure that we deserve in Southeast Hillsborough County, because we deserve good roads as well.
Yeah.
You need the infrastructure, but you also want to do so without having your taxes go up in your district. What are some ways? How can you do both of those things?
Well, the first thing, if I identify a need for new spending, the first thing I'm going to do is look at the existing budget. I'm going to identify waste, fraud, and abuse, and then I'm going to identify programs that are outside those core government functions of education, roads, fire, police, public safety things, military at the national level. Those are the things the government needs to be spending money on. And, so we need to work within the existing budget, because if we raise taxes, what we're doing is we're saying to the citizens, we're too lazy as your elected officials to work within our budget. We're going to make you go look through your budget for something that you're going to live without. And that's us abdicating our job to the people. And particularly on roads, if I may add, a lot of times you see they'll build a road, they'll do a project, it'll be under construction for a year, then it'll be business as usual for 6 months, and then they'll redo it again. So
because you have to adjust to the growth.
It's kind of like, you need to plan for more long term, and you need to do the projects properly. It's like what I learned as a kid. You do it right. You do it once. You don't do it right. You have to do it again. So, do it once and do it right, and then move on to the next project. And that in and of itself, if we have accountability and long-term planning, that ought to provide a lot of savings that we can use to improve the infrastructure.
Well, Mike, I heard you say if we were to raise taxes to try to address some of the transportation issues, but I've also heard you say that as far as it goes for you will not ever be voting to raise taxes. You put it as you were burning the ships at the shore, essentially. So tell us about that pledge.
Yeah, so essentially, as I've said publicly, and now I'm saying on radio,
there you go,
that if I raise your taxes, please vote me out of office at your next opportunity. You're going to have an opportunity every 2 years if I'm elected. And I'm saying that because I know I go up to Tallahassee, my job is on the line, and I'm going to work really hard to make sure that we don't raise your taxes because I expect my constituents to hold me to what I just said.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say to my fellow legislators, they asked me to vote for something that's raising the taxes. I said, no, sir. Number one, it's not the right thing to do. And number two, I expect my constituents are going to vote me out of office because they're going to play this recording.
Mm-hmm.
So that's me burning the ships right there. I will not raise your taxes. I will work within the existing budget to identify savings, and then we're going to fund the government that way. And I think there'll be plenty to do what the government truly needs to do.
What is that amendment for transportation, and how are you standing on that?
Well, there's two amendments on the ballot, both of them that are calling for raising taxes. One is for the school board, and one of them is for the transportation. Looking at the transportation amendment, this is for Hillsborough County. There are a couple things I note about that. First of all, half the money goes for mass transit, which isn't necessarily what my district is a suburban district. I don't know that we have the population density to use that mass transit in the way that the proponents of the amendment envision. The other half of the money can be used for road projects, but it has a provision in there that restricts your ability to use the money to widen existing roads, which is what I think the consensus in my district is. That's exactly what we need. So we know we're going to be taxed, and we don't really know that either the public transit or these road dollars are going to be used for what we need. So I'd rather work within the existing budget and use that for the projects that we do need.
Do you have other things that are important to you as far as your campaign goes that you would like our listeners to know that you'll stand for? In other words, we know that you'll fight to not have taxes increased. What are some of the other things that are important to you that we haven't touched on so far?
Yeah, I mean, other than the transportation is very important, I'm going to promote those good family values that the families and the good people in my district believe in. And, going back to civility and working across the aisle, I think that's very important. I think that we've had great economic growth. When we keep taxes low, we keep regulations low, and we create an environment where individuals can start businesses, people can get a good education, people can get to work. That leads to economic growth. That leads to lower crime. When we have an America First agenda, that leads to peace and strength abroad. And we can win the war of ideas. We don't need to go negative. We don't need to be uncivil. When we're talking about ideas and policies and we're keeping things clean, we're winning. When we become uncivil and we go back and forth, and my party hasn't been perfect, and I think everyone needs to improve on that score. But then things become chaos, and then we see a lot of obstruction and gridlock. So I've worked on a bipartisan effort. I'm a gubernatorial appointee to the Judicial Nominating Commission. We have bar appointees and we have governor appointees, and we don't always come from exactly the same viewpoint, but we sit there and we work all day when we deliberate on nominees, and we come to a consensus, and we're happy. We usually have dinner or drinks after, and everyone has a list that they can live with. So I've worked in a bipartisan manner before in a deliberative body, and I'd hope to do that in Tallahassee.
Now, Mike, tell us how folks can find out more about you online.
My website is electmikebeltran.com, and I also have a Facebook presence. The handle is Elect Mike Beltran. Those are the two best ways to follow. I update the Facebook page almost every day, sometimes multiple times a day, and that's the best way to find out what's going on with the campaign.
Any upcoming events right offhand?
We're going to have a fundraiser on October 29th. That'll go out on the website and the Facebook page, and then you can always obviously November 6th is the time to vote.
Welcome back to the Morgan Streetman Show. Roxanne Wilder with you. If you want to be a part of the show, 888-404-1010. We're getting ready to go out there. We want to also say thank you so much to our guest, Mike Beltran, for coming in, and electmikebeltran.com. That's where you can find out more about him online. I like what he stands for. I like his values.
Yeah, he's a good guy. He's fun to talk to, too. We could have had him on. I mean, we could have him on and talk to him for probably 3 hours about all the stuff that we like to talk about. He's very knowledgeable about the same kind of issues and knowledgeable about the Constitution, the structure of our government. When we had Jamie Moody on, which was that just last week? I guess it was just last week. Mm-hmm. Similar kind of a guy, another guy who really studies civics and the structure of our government and the philosophy of our government and why things are set up the way they are. And to me, those folks are really interesting to talk to because
and important.
Yeah, because it seems like we have kind of lost a lot of that. Well, we told you earlier today about the Dogmen again, and we're keeping it going in our Halloween-themed Out There series this year. And we're trying to give you costume ideas, I guess, is what we do all month. I mean, or educate you or bring things to your attention. So, we're kind of on a kick right now where we're talking about animal and human hybrids, but we're not talking about shapeshifters. Shapeshifters are the easy ones. They're kind of the obvious ones. That's like the werewolves and other things and, skinwalkers that we've gone through on the show before. But how about the creatures that are hopelessly hybridized? They cannot unhybridize. They are part human, part animal all the way through. Let's think of a few that we could kind of run through here, like a mermaid, which has the head and upper body of a woman but the tail of a fish, right? How about
you're stuck as a mermaid.
Unless
you're Daryl Hannah.
Unless you're Daryl Hannah and it's Hollywood, and then pretty much anything can happen. And a harpy, you know what harpies are? The head and breasts of a woman with wings, body, and feet of a bird of prey, usually considered to be a vulture. They're considered wind spirits and are involved with lightning and windstorms and other things like that. Those are harpies. Kind of similar to sirens. You know sirens? You heard a siren song? The siren song? Well, those are actually almost primarily birds with a woman's head that can sing really beautiful, but they also eat human beings. So they would sing, and the guys on the ships, their voices would be too beautiful for them to keep sailing. So they would have to pull over, and ships would be dashed on the rocks, and then the sailors would be eaten by these strange sirens. Now, in later representations, they end up having more of a woman's body with just the legs and feet and some wings of a bird. But the earliest depictions are just a bird with a woman's head. And how about the centaur? You remember those? Those have the upper body and head of a person, but the lower body and four legs of a horse. Okay? Remember?
A-Rod actually did a portrait of himself as a centaur. Alex Rodriguez. Do you remember that?
Oh, no, I must have missed
I'll pull up
that
that
one.
photo for you. It's
I
interesting.
was reading his interview in Cigar Aficionado, but he didn't mention that in that interview. So, Pan and the satyrs and the Roman fauns, remember those creatures? They have the hindquarters, legs, and horns of a goat, and everything else is human. I could already tell here by the speed at which I am moving through this information that I'm not going to get to give you the full shebang on the Minotaur. But, there it is with A-Rod with his bat. That's funny. I'll tell you, a centaur is a goofy-looking creature. A couple more to throw at you because it isn't all just ancient Greek mythology. How about the scorpion men of ancient Acadia and Babylon? Okay, they had the head, torso, and arms of a man and the body, legs, and tail, and, of course, stinger of a scorpion. That's kind of like a centaur, a desert centaur, right? It was a scorpion man. And then, of course, the manticore. Remember the manticore of Persian mythology? Had the head of a human, the body of a lion, and the tail with venomous spines in it, like porcupine quills. Woo-wee. Well, and then we brings you to today's subject, and that is the Minotaur. Now, Minotaur is Minos, King Minos. Minos is Taurus, or minus his bull, okay? And the way that this story, it's such an interesting story to me, particularly in mythology when they talk about what are apparently human beings but are descended from the quote-unquote gods or goddesses. Because I always wonder how does that tie in with other legends and religions and ideas from the past? And are they the same description or different descriptions of the same events? In other words, are they just looking at things a little bit differently? But the Minotaur was created basically because King Minos and his queen, Queen Pasiphae, who were both descended from gods. Minos was descended from Zeus and Europa, and Pasiphae was descended from the sun god Helios. They both lived on the island of Crete and worshipped Zeus in the form of a bull. Now, Poseidon, Zeus's brother, the god of the oceans and stuff, he got jealous, and so he wanted to be worshipped also. So he sent a perfect white bull to King Minos and ordered him to sacrifice that bull to Poseidon. Well, King Minos' wife kind of really liked the bull, and he liked the bull as well, and they really didn't want to sacrifice it, so they substituted a bull in and sacrificed a substitute bull. Well, that really ticked off Poseidon, and he caused Queen Pasiphae to actually fall in love, like romantic love, with the bull. And they had a child. And that child, which is hard to understand how that would be possible, but that child was the Minotaur. And they couldn't do anything with the Minotaur because he's got basically the body of a man and the head of a bull, hugely strong, very destructive, and only dines on human flesh, of course. Even though bulls eat grass, this bull eats people. So they had to bury him under the castle. So then they had this Athenian guy, Daedalus. He built a labyrinth under the castle, and that's where they put the Minotaur. And then they had to feed the Minotaur people. So they had to go out and capture people in war and stuff like that, and they cut a deal with Athens based on a war that Athens would have to send some people for them down to Crete for them to feed to the Minotaur, which they did until they sent a young man named Theseus. And Theseus went down there, and he decided he wasn't just going to be Minotaur meat. He was going to try to be something more than Minotaur meat in his life, and he decided he was going to try to kill the Minotaur. And also, and don't you love these Greek myths, because they're just like one level too complicated, aren't they? Everything is more complicated. Also, King Minos' daughter fell in love with Theseus when she saw him, because apparently he was a good-looking Athenian boy. And so she gave him a ball of string. And he used that ball of string to basically, that was the way he could find his way out of the labyrinth. So he went down in the labyrinth with that ball of string. It was tied to something at the entrance, and he went all the way down there. He found the Minotaur, killed the Minotaur, and then to find his way back out of the labyrinth, he just followed the string back to the entrance. Isn't that interesting? Mm-hmm. I mean, I just find these stories just really interesting because where did they come up with the ideas for all this stuff? Where did they come up with the ideas for gods having some kind of relations and offspring with humans? Where did they come up with the ideas that the offsprings would be mutants and monsters?
You read about this all weekend. Did you get to the Chipra?
The Chipra?
Yeah, it's got the head of a chipmunk and the body of a zebra.
I missed that one. I'm Morgan Streetman, and that's the way I see it.